Today we're starting a new series, and it's simply called Life Hacks. How many of you know what a life hack is? Yeah. It's basically a simple tip or trick that simplifies an everyday task. It's very simple, very easy. Usually just one household item that you might use in a different way than you would normally use it is going to help make a totally different task super easy to do. A few examples that I'll share. I'll share a few at the beginning of every week in this series that might be helpful for you. So if you have an item, like a large item that you want to fill with water, but you can't fit it in your sink, the first life hack is you can just use a dustpan, put it in your sink, and it will kind of be its own spout to fill a large bucket that you might need. So that's a pretty cool trick. I like that one. So you can use that one. Another one is if you have a drink that you want to get really cold really fast, a life hack for that, get a paper towel wet, wrap it around the bottle or the can and stick it in the freezer for about 10 to 15 minutes. And in that short period of time, that drink should be pretty much ice cold, ready to go. So you go from room temperature, gross, spit it out, who wants that, to it's amazingly refreshing in just a matter of minutes. Just a simple little life hack. Here's one that I use all the time, is whenever I have a Post-it note that I'm finished with, I'll take it and kind of fold it and use it to clean out the keys in my keyboard on my laptop. Because it'll get filled with all kinds of junk and just random stuff. Like, how did that fuzz get in there? Where did that fuzz come from? Why is it in my keys on my keyboard? But, just kind of use it to sweep away all of that stuff. Some simple life hacks, and we'll have a few of these every week in this series. Maybe you can try some of these. Maybe one of these, I'm going to have a can of pop I'm going to leave out on purpose to try this trick that you talked about and see if you're lying to me, Stephen. See if you're going to, tell falsehoods here at church. But anyway, so I know the last one works because I use it all the time. So that I can't guarantee that these will work, but we can try it. So we're going to do in this series every week is we're going to look at life hacks, but not for small, everyday, around the house sort of things, but for large life issues. And we're going to look at this from the book of Proverbs. So last series that we finished last week was in the Psalms, which is written by King David. So Proverbs, the next book in the Old Testament as it's listed, is written by David's son, Solomon. So the story goes that Solomon is about to become king of Israel. His father David has died. He's next in line. And so God appears to him in a dream. And it's sort of the only time where God sort of does the genie in a bottle trick. In this dream, he basically says to Solomon, hey, I'm going to grant you one wish. Basically is what he's saying. I'll give you one thing. What one thing? I'll get anything you want. Just name it and I'll give it to you. Name it and claim it, Solomon. Okay, we're not going to preach that here, but God did that to Solomon just that one time, okay? And so Solomon, this is a big deal. Think about that for a second. If God appeared to you and said, I'll give you whatever, one thing, one wish, one desire, name it, it's done. What would you ask for? Solomon thinks about this, and he thinks, okay, I'm about to become king. That's kind of a big deal. And he has enough self-awareness to know that what I'm doing doesn't just affect me, but it affects millions of people. So he asks for wisdom. He asks for great understanding to be a good leader. And the scripture says that God was so pleased with that answer from Solomon that he says, hey, you could have asked for riches. You could have asked for a long life, but you didn't. And because your ask was so noble, I'm going to give you that plus the other things that you could have asked for yet didn't. And so Solomon became known as not only the wealthiest man who ever lived, even today, when you look at the currency standards and switch it over, we're talking trillionaire. We're talking the richest man who ever lived comparatively, even in today's modern world. And he's known as being the wisest man who ever lived. God granted that desire to him. He was so wise, in fact, that even other world leaders came to him for counsel. They would come into his court and we've got this issue, what would you do in this situation? And there are stories, even extra biblical accounts of this happening, where other powerful leaders would come to him for advice. That's power. That is influence. That is wisdom right there. And so we're going to look at this book of wisdom literature called Proverbs that Solomon wrote. And the nature of them is they just go boom, boom, boom. Nearly every verse or two is a totally different proverb. There's a lot of the same themes in the book of Proverbs, but they're all kind of scattered. It's sort of like Solomon just decides, he keeps a journal. One day he has this great, wise thought. I'm going to write that down. And then in a couple days later, it's a totally different thought, but a wise thought. Well, I'll write that down. And then they compile them into this book and put them in the Old Testament of the Bible. And it seems a little bit scattered. And so it's kind of neat because you can sort of pick them apart and you don't lose the context of them. because there's nothing surrounding it that's going to change the meaning. It is what it says in that one verse. That's what it is. And so we're going to glean a lot of wisdom, I think, in the next few weeks from this series, Life Hacks, from the book of Proverbs. Today we're going to look at a topic that I tend to struggle with sometimes, and maybe you can relate to me, and that is patience. Today's life hack is all about patience. And I think that if God wanted me to have more patience, he would have made me a doctor. There it is, right? Yeah, I struggle, and I'm going to even tell I can't believe I'm going to share one of these stories with you later, but I will, and it's going to make me look terrible, and that's kind of why I'm sharing it, right? So I can be relatable. So the point of me preaching is not saying, hey, guys, I've got this figured out, so I'm going to tell you how to do this. So the point of me preaching is saying, hey, I'm in there with you, right? I'm knee-deep in this mud, and I can't move. It's quicksand. So, the struggle is real, okay, this life hack with me specifically. Patience. So here's what we're not going to do necessarily, though. This is not a how-to-be patient message, because most of us know how to be patient. And nearly every day we have opportunities to be patient, and we know the right thing to do. We know the patient thing to do, and yet we fail just to do it. We neglect, or we just willingly say, nope, not going to wait. Nope, not going to be patient. I'm going to just push through. Right? I'm just going to say whatever I think. I'm going to knee-jerk, and we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So this is not necessarily a how to be patient. There's a little bit of that here and there. But here's what we're going to talk about. I want to highlight 4 benefits of patience from the book of Proverbs today. 4 benefits of patience. So again, with this in mind, if we think a little bit, even just pause when we're making a decision or about to say or do something, and we think, okay, there's benefits to me waiting on this. There's benefits to my silence in this conversation. There's benefits to pushing the pause button. And if we can think of those in the middle of situations, and it's not easy, I get it, but if we can think about the benefits of patience, I think that we will be patient more easily, more often. So we're going to look at 4 benefits today of patience from the book of Proverbs. The first benefit is simply credibility. A patient person gains credibility. Proverbs 16:32 says, better a patient person than a warrior, one with self-control than one who takes a city. Now, when I read that, 2 sort of cultural groups came into mind. And I will say off the top, I'm not making a political statement here, okay? But this is true. I don't care what your political leaning is. You can't really disagree with what I'm going to say. I mean, you could, but you'd be wrong. He who has the microphone has the power, right? No. All right. So this is true. Loss of credibility because of lack of patience, I think, is seen in 2 key areas. The first is in modern American politics. I've been watching the Supreme Court hearings this week, and I've been fascinated. I mean, I've literally listened to like all day Wednesday in my ear all day was the hearings, and I'm just like, this is so cool. I love this process. It's really, kind of messy and filthy and dirty and all that at times, and they throw mud and whatever. They have an agenda, but it's awesome. I just love it. And so if you didn't know, kind of my passion before ministry was politics, and so this kind of like got me kind of going again a little bit. I'm not going to run for office or anything. I'm not asking for your vote. It just kind of, got me excited this week. But here's the thing. I looked this week. The latest number that I could find was from July of this year. The latest congressional approval rating is at 17%. Less than 1 out of 5 Americans have trust and faith and belief in our federal legislators. That's pretty terrible. If you can't get even 1 out of 5 in a group to agree on something, something's wrong. And I think this is due to lack of patience, even in our political system. Each side, both sides do this, so this is not a political stance. Neither side wants to be patient with the other side, right? If we have the majority, we're going to do what we want to do. If we have the influence and power, we're not going to wait on them. We're not going to, take time to have a discussion. We're just going to go, and it happens every time with every party. So it's not like just one side. There's also a lack of patience in the process, and I think that we've seen that a little bit this week too. We want to do things this way because we can, or do things quickly because we just want to. And I think that's why people kind of have given up on nothing's ever going to happen that's of any use or value in this country until the political system becomes a little more patient. And I thought even this week, it's like I'll do what I want to do because I can. That's kind of what I've sensed a lot in our politics. You know who talks like that? Children. That's what children do. I want it now. Remember Willy Wonka? I want it now. That's what politicians have done for a couple generations now. And again, loss of credibility, even in that sort of system. The other one, I would say, is in the media. I'm not saying fake news. Okay, please do not misunderstand what I'm saying. But I am saying that in modern media, there are so many new types of media. Media is so quick now. There's a race to be first in getting this story out. There's a race in, I said breaking news first, and they didn't, so our ratings should be better. Or this news source is so much better because they do it so fast. And yet there's retractions and mistakes that get made and things that are incorrect or not complete. And so there's a lack of credibility, I think, even in modern media, in our culture, in our country, due to lack of patience. If we'd wait for details to come through and get the full story out, it wouldn't be faster, but it'd be better. So I think that that's true. And that's really not new. Even in the 1800s, yellow journalism, you ever heard of that? So it kind of sort of, in some degree, started a war. Because we have this sensational headline that's going to get all these views and all this attention, and it's like talking about power, different world powers at odds that may not have been, and it started something that maybe wasn't even there. So it's not new, but still we see it increasing, I think because of internet, because 24/7 news cycle. We got to keep things pumping. We got to make the news and not just report it. So there's a lack of patience in that area. But not just in those two huge cultural circles is this true, but in our lives, we lose credibility if we lack patience. It's true. A lack of patience in our lives can lead to a reputation of being a hothead, being impulsive, being undisciplined, being rude, being reckless or careless, or even untrustworthy. A lack of patience leads to less credibility. But yet growing in patience, here's the benefit. As we grow in patience and show more patience, we can see the opposite effect and benefit in our lives, a gain of credibility. We can be seen as someone who is thoughtful and reasonable and disciplined and kind, someone who gives sound advice, someone who is trusted. And I don't know about you, but I want to be a person of credibility. Not just because I'm a pastor, people should come to me because of the position. I would rather people just approach me because I have credibility, because they know that, he's level-headed, he's reasonable. He's going to really think things through before just saying, here's what you should do with your life, And I think that's where we all should desire to be, but that requires patience. And we'll talk more about that here in just a minute. That's the first benefit of patience, is a gain in credibility. The second benefit that we see here in Proverbs, second benefit of patience, is fewer regrets. How many of you would like to have that benefit? Fewer regrets. Proverbs 14:29, Solomon writes, "Whoever is patient has great understanding, but one who is quick-tempered displays folly." Another way that you could word that verse is this: reflexes can result in regret. Reflexes can result in regret. So if I'm a doctor and I'm going to check your reflex, I'm probably not going to stand directly in front of you while doing that, because that reflex could result in a regret. I'm going to get kicked, and I don't want to get kicked, so I'm going to step over here where it's safe and let your leg just swing as far as it wants to go. So, imagine the punter, for the Chiefs, when he's getting his physical, I'm sure the doctor stands way far away just in case, So reflexes can result in regret. And here's the sad part about a lack of patience. Sadly, the people that we should have the most patience for, we usually have the least amount of patience for. Which means that the people that we love the most, we end up hurting the most. But it's a reflex. See, we don't intend harm. We would never dream of hurting anyone, but yet we do because we give into those reflexes. Maybe it's your spouse. You have a hard time not reflexing with your spouse. and you say things, shouldn't they know better than that? Right, come on, what are you thinking? Shouldn't they have learned this about me by now? Why would they say that phrase to me? Because they should know better. Well, it's a reflex, and it causes regret. Why do they keep doing that same thing? I've asked them to do it this way, and they're not doing it that way. And I've asked them over and over, and we're just not showing patience with the people that we should show the most patience toward. It happens even with our spouse. We don't cut them enough slack. I don't want to use this word, but we will nag our spouse about things. Men do that too, so this is not about the wives, all right? Men can be the worst nags ever if we're not careful. And what does it do? It leads to resentment. It leads to harsh words. It leads to anger. It leads to bitterness. And here's the real problem, is once we have done that reflex, it can't be undone. The words can't be unsaid. That look can't be undone. And what we end up having to do is spend so much time and energy getting back relationally to where we were before that mistake ever happened. So it's 3 steps backward and 3 steps forward. That's great, right? Well, no. We could have taken 3 steps forward without going backward first and actually advanced in our relationships instead of regret, and then I have to make up for it, and then another regret and reflex, and I have to make up for that too. And here's where I am going to get really down and dirty, here's where I struggle with patience, and you can imagine where I'm going with this. Children. Kids, right? I'm not great. Now, some days are better than others. Every parent will do that. But here's what we do with our kids. Don't they know the rules? Shouldn't they not make that mistake over and over? Haven't they learned better than this? Why would they do that? And so what I fail, and I'll just say me, what I fail to learn or see sometimes as a parent with my kids is that they're still learning. Okay? If I'm talking to adults about patience, how much more do we need to have patience for our kids? How much more should we expect that they need some time? And yet we failed to do that. I'm going to tell a story. This happened about 2 weeks ago. We were getting ready for school, and Kennedy's really upset about something. And has Kim told anybody this story yet? Just making sure. I don't know if she told anybody yet. Okay. So we're getting ready for school, and she's really upset about something before school. I mean, she's literally like screaming and crying about something. And I'm trying to be calm about it, and I'm trying to comfort her, and she doesn't want to go to school and whatever. And so I'm like, we're going to go to school. You have to go to school. It's going to be fine. But 40 minutes of that, and I'm like, oh, Kennedy, come on, girl. I can't do this, all right? And she's still hysterical. I mean, screaming, crying. She will not calm down. I just can't. I've just reached the limit. And so you know what good old dad does, right? He pretty much yells at his daughter, calm down. Stop crying. We're going to go to school. You're going to be fine. Stop it. Now, does that make things any better at all, ever? Scott says yes, but he knows he's being facetious. No, it doesn't make anything any better. It made things worse. And so here is the cherry on top. So in an effort to try to stay cool in front of my kids, I'm going to go off to my bedroom. I'm going to do the right thing, okay? But I am so frustrated and angry. Here's what I did. I'm walking to the bedroom door, and we have these hollow bedroom doors. You know where I'm going with this? So we have these hollow, old, just cheap door in front of our bedroom. And it's not closed all the way, but it's mostly closed. I'm going to open it forcefully. And so I take the side of my fist and just open the door. And it opened, but then there's a spot in the middle of the door about that shape right there. Now, I tried to show patience for a long time, and then I cracked, and then I cracked some more, even trying to do the right thing. And so now I have to replace this bedroom door. And I'll tell you, if you're a parent, there's nothing more humbling than apologizing to your 6-year-old, right? That's like a, oh, kill me now sort of moment. And I did. So after I was like, and it's like, it was just awful. It was the worst day of my life, probably literally the worst day of my life. So so the kids thought that was funny, just to let you know, the door thing. They laughed at it, like they thought it was so funny, and I'm like, okay, I really have to let them know this is not appropriate behavior. This is not funny at all. So I finally sit down with Kennedy, and we have a really good talk, and I apologize, and I'm crying in front of my 6-year-old, talking about how Dad's an idiot. I don't think I used that word, but I probably should have. So I'm like, I apologized and made sure she was okay, and she seemed that she was fine, and she was laughing about the door, and so she was probably okay at that point. Kids are resilient, and I thank God for that every day, because if not, gosh, my kids are ruined forever because of my lack of patience and all of my regrets. So, and this is not a habit, right? This is like a one-time thing because I replaced the door. I don't want to pay for doors all the time. So I, apologized to her. And then even on the way to school, telling my kids, hey, that was wrong. Dad was wrong. That was inappropriate. Dad should not have done that. Please forgive me again. And then I just all weekend, 2 weekends ago, all weekend long, just struggled with this regret. Because of it's a single little thing that may not be a huge deal, and we can laugh about it now, even 2 weeks later, a little bit, even though, to my shame, I told that story publicly. But still, that's the kind of regret that we can avoid if we learn more patience, if we grow in patience. When we act out of reflex, it will lead to holes in the door. It will lead to regret. And this is true in relationships. It's true in purchasing stuff. Impulse buying is a reflex that can lead to regret. You ever seen the Sky Mall magazine? You know what that is if you fly a lot? The most useless stuff ever that no one needs, and yet when you're up there, you're trapped. You're in this cabin, and you have nowhere to go, 30,000 feet. Oh, I have to have that. Oh, I've got to have that. Oh, I'm going to order 2 of those in case the first one breaks, And we think we need this, and we don't. And this is why I hate, car shopping. We don't do it often because you're made to feel like, oh, you've got to do it. Act now. This deal is going to be gone at the end of the weekend. I'm like, oh, I don't want to make this huge mistake on this purchase, and I hate conflict, and I hate pressure, and I just don't want to do it. And so if our cars break down, I'm probably going to walk everywhere because I don't want to go buy a car. Even at your job, patience is key, and a lack of patience can lead to regret. My dad works at Toyota. They manufacture some cars there in Kentucky, and he is part of the final inspection line, and so he's all about quality control. Sometimes that process can take time, and they have this thing. We want to have a car out on the line every 45 seconds. A car's finished. And if someone in my dad's department or even in another department, they see a defect in a car, they're going to want to take time to check that out. And it's going to cost the company a little bit of money, but you know what's not going to cost them? A huge recall where it's all over the news for weeks at a time, and you get that little thing in your mail, and it says, hey, this thing is going to blow up, because Kevin Wilhoit didn't do his job, that sort of thing. So, a lack of patience can lead to regret. So, people in the banking industry, you might want to take time to check your numbers, that sort of thing. If you're a writer, you need a good editor. It takes time, but it's going to lead to less regret, lead to less mistakes. Don't you want your doctor to read the report fully and correctly before they give you a diagnosis? Patience pays off. And if a doctor doesn't take time, well, I think it looks like this, and they tell you have this disease, and it's not true, it's going to cause some panic. And then they're going to have the conversation with the 6-year-old, say, I'm so sorry, I'm a medical professional, but I rushed through that, and you don't have this disease after all. So you're happy and angry at the same time. It's an amazing sort of feeling. You want to make sure that your reports for work for your boss are accurate. The numbers are right. All that lines up. And if we don't do that, it will lead to mistakes. It'll lead to regret. In every area of our life, this is true. So patience leads to more credibility and fewer regrets. And the third benefit of patience, as we see in the Proverbs, is patience leads to or promotes healing. Patience leads to or promotes healing. Proverbs 15, verse 18 says, a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict, but the one who is patient calms a quarrel. Another way to say that is this: a level head can provide lots of healing. There's this idea, fight fire with fire. So in an argument, the loudest person wins, right? The more that we escalate, that's going to really come to a conclusion, isn't it? Yeah, probably an explosion, probably a fist fight. That's not the kind of conclusion that we want in our relational disputes. Doesn't promote healing. And the problem with arguments is they become circular, don't they? And they become hotter and more hostile and more personal, and it never leads anywhere. So somewhere along the way, we have to learn patience to find healing. And relational healing requires relational patience. And there's two ways to do that, two things quickly. So let me just approach this in two different ways. So if you're looking for maybe emotional or relational healing and you're in the middle of something, this will apply. And then in a second, we'll get to if you're involved in the process of helping others to find healing. So first, let's say you're involved in this interpersonal conflict and you're looking for healing. Two things we have to do to reach that conclusion is first, ask questions, which takes time to step back from the situation and take an inventory. Some questions like, why was I so hurt or offended by that person? Should I have been hurt or offended by that person? Have I been overly sensitive to this person or to this topic that they mentioned in this discussion? Do I share any blame in this situation? Because it's easy to say, well, they did this and it's all their fault. But it's more helpful to look back and honestly say, do I have any part to play in this dispute? And usually there's some that we all have a part to play in. Here's a good question. Have I really tried to reconcile, or do I just want to be mad? Honestly, sometimes we would rather just be mad and be angry and be loud and frustrated and feed off that negative energy than to really do the hard work of being patient and finding a healing solution to this problem. So asking questions is key in relational healing and conflicts. The second key to relational healing and relational patience is then active listening. Hearing the other's point of view or the other parties involved. Really taking time to listen to them. Hear them out. Don't just assume that you know what they're going to say and then go off of that. Don't just listen so you can get your next argument out, your next point out, or the yeah, but out. Really act. That's why it's active listening. It's important in this healing process. Try to walk in their shoes. See things from their perspective. It might change the way you feel or think or react about that situation. If we really want healing, this is a great place to start. Relational patience is a great place to start. Now, let's say that you aren't involved directly in, but you're maybe kind of mediating some sort of conflict. Here's a few things to consider about relational patience as well. The first thing I would recommend is be a calming presence. Be a calming presence. So again, a hot-tempered person stirs up conflict. But one who is patient calms a quarrel. Just your demeanor, just your body language in this discussion can go a long way in bringing healing in that situation. Another key is to stay neutral, and that requires patience because I already know I agree with them because they're my friend, or they're a better friend, and so I'm just going to automatically side with them, and I'm going to see things a different way than what this other person's saying. Now, the key to real relational healing and relational patience is to stay neutral. And again, as with the first example, no assuming. It requires hearing every side, every argument in this, and then coming to a determination of how best to move forward, to find healing. And here's the biggest thing about this, whether you're in a situation or overseeing a situation. Patience is required for healing to take place, period. So you might come to an understanding and still feel wounded. It's going to take some time for that wound to heal. You're going to still probably see that person in a negative light for a while, and it's going to take some time for that to work itself out. And you might have these people, they may not talk and be BFFs ever again. It's going to take time for those things to work themselves out. So patience, even after the conflict is resolved, is still important. Healing is a process. So we've seen patience leads to more credibility, fewer regrets, more healing in relationships and in life in general. And then the fourth thing, and I'm cheating a little bit here, and you'll see why in a second. The fourth benefit to patience today is in spiritual growth. Here's why I'm cheating. I'm going to quote from Psalms instead of Proverbs. We'll get to a proverb in just a second. So patience is key in spiritual growth. Psalm 27:14. Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen your heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. So I think he said wait twice. He probably wants us to wait. He probably wants us to be patient on the Lord. And that's not always easy because God doesn't always work on our time frame. God doesn't always do what we want when we want. A great example of that from the Old Testament is a man named Joseph. Joseph had all these older brothers, and God really had his kind of blessing and this plan and future for Joseph, and he gave Joseph these dreams about this future, and when he shared it with his family, they weren't as excited about his dreams of being really in charge of his family and ruling over them. And so his brothers decide they're going to kill him. And they're like, wait a second, let's not do that. We'll just sell him into slavery instead. That's a great plan B, right? So they sell their brother into slavery. How many of you would love to sell your siblings into slavery? Don't raise your hands. No. All right. So they sell their brother Joseph into slavery, and then he becomes he's owned by this master, and then a misunderstanding happens while he's serving, and he gets thrown in prison. He's there for 13 years, an innocent man in prison for a crime that he never committed for 13 years. And even one of his cellmates gets released and says, "Hey, I'll tell them that you're innocent and that you're awesome." He forgets about him immediately. 13 years, rots in a cell for a crime he didn't commit. He's waiting. Finally, through a turn of events, he is released from prison and becomes the vice pharaoh of all of Egypt. He becomes second in command of the greatest world power at that time, one of the greatest world powers in all of history. And he ends up working out this plan to save this entire region of the world through a great famine and drought. So he saves millions of lives. God used him just like he said he would, but Joseph had to wait for years. Basically from the time he was sold, from the time he was released from prison, about 20 years all told. But yet at the very end of this time, he's talking back to 20 years later to his brothers who sold him into slavery. He says, "Hey, you guys meant this for evil, but God meant it for good." That's a pretty good attitude to have after 20 years of being forgotten. 20 years later, you have the opportunity to basically behead your brothers, and instead you love them and embrace them and bring them to live with you in Egypt. It's pretty amazing, but he had to wait. God didn't work on his timetable. It required patience. So here's my encouragement. Whatever God's doing in your life, whatever you're praying or believing God for, don't give up on God. He doesn't worry. He's above time and space. He kind of made that for our benefit. He doesn't need that. And so, what may seem like a long time to us, God's like, oh yeah, let's do that now. His timing is perfect, and it's really timeless, and so we have to be patient on him. The second way to see patience and spiritual growth as we close is this. I want us to see the importance of understanding God's patience with us. As we're trying to be patient with God and his timing, it's important to see that God's also patient with us. So there is an ancient Chinese proverb, and you probably know it, but it says, "A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step." Life's a journey. Your spiritual growth is a journey. And along the way, there will be some missteps. So here's the thing we have to understand about God's patience, is that he's patient with us. When we lack patience, he doesn't give up on us immediately. When we make a misstep and we fall into a sin or maybe even a pattern of sin, he's not saying, "Okay, I'm kicking you out now. I'm done with you. You had your chance. We're done here." God's redemptive by nature. 1 John says he is love. And so out of that heart of love, he's going to keep pursuing us in his patience. In his patience. Even Jesus' own disciples who were with him day and night didn't always get what he was trying to say immediately. And he didn't say, you guys are so stupid. He would just, and there are times where you can kind of hear Jesus kind of sigh through the pages of the Bible. He's like, "Oh, guys, come on, seriously, But then he'll just explain it again. He'll do it. He's patient with him. Even Thomas, one of the 12 disciples, when Jesus rose from the dead, he hadn't seen him yet, but he'd heard, Jesus is alive. And what did Thomas say? "Unless I see him for myself, unless I see the scars in his hands and his feet, I'm not going to believe." So Jesus, Jesus heard about that. Jesus heard about, and you know what he said? "Okay, Thomas, fine. I'm not going to show myself to you." Jesus said, "I'll show up, but I'm going to do this. I'm not going to show you my scars because that's what you want. I'm not going to be patient." No, he's patient. He waited for Thomas to be with the other disciples who had seen Jesus, and he shows up and says, "Here you go, Thomas. There you go. Is that proof enough for you?" So Jesus is patient. God is patient with us. When we make those missteps or mistakes or have those regrets from lack of patience or something else, God's patient. He doesn't give up on us, so we shouldn't give up on him. So again, we see these 4 benefits today that we can, through patience, we can gain credibility. We can have fewer regrets. We can see healing in our relationships, and we can see accelerated spiritual growth as we wait on God's timing for what he wants to do. And as we're patient, and we see that he's patient with us on this journey of faith as well. So my hope is that even this week, you will have opportunities to be patient. You will. At your job, at your home, with your family, even maybe, on the way home in your car, you're going to have an opportunity to just show patience. And my heart is, as we think about these great benefits in our lives, it would help us to maybe take an extra second before we speak, or take an extra second before we do something that we're going to regret because of the benefits at play. I can have peace in my relationships through patience? Yes. Well, maybe I should try that. You mean I can see even more spiritual growth if I just wait on God a little bit longer? Yes, he will come through. We just have to wait. And we have to see that God's patient with us. You mean I can have more credibility in my life as a person of patience? Absolutely. And so that's what I want us to do this week, is even grow more in, maybe you're a really patient person, but we can always grow. We can always have an opportunity to show patience in this specific situation. We have that option. We have that choice. And I pray that having these benefits in mind, we would do just that.